yeah, yeah. The Amero, the Amero, the Amero. Take me for
Episode 3: Why Housing Became an Economic Security Crisis. Season 2: North America Under Pressure. Welcome back to the kitchen table. I want you to think about that young man. Let's call him David. He just landed his dream job, a nursing position at a major hospital in the heart of the city. He is exactly the kind of essential worker a thriving economy needs. But when he sits down at his computer to look for an apartment near the hospital, his excitement turns into despair. The math simply does not work. Even with a good salary, the rent for a basic one-bedroom apartment takes up 60% of his take-home pay. Buying a home? That is mathematically impossible. To take the job, David has to commute 2 hours each way, exhausting his energy and draining his wallet before his shift even begins. A worker can find a job, but they cannot afford to live near it. Welcome to Season 2, Episode 3 of the Amero Digital Bridge to the FinTech Future. I'm your host, Chasen Lee. Today, we are looking at the foundation of the North American kitchen table. We are asking, when does housing stop being just a market issue and become a national resilience crisis? Today, we are moving past the headlines to understand the invisible links between housing supply, cheap credit, zoning laws, migration, and our continent's productivity crisis. We will explore a difficult counterargument that while housing wealth is vital for existing families, it is silently destroying our economic future by distorting how capital is allocated. Finally, we will face a sobering reality for the Amero movement. A resilient digital monetary system will fail if it is not paired with massive real economy reforms. Chisun. For decades, politicians have told us that housing is just a matter of supply and demand, but that is only half the truth. Housing is the physical manifestation of our monetary policy. To understand how we arrived at this crisis, we have to look at the explosive cocktail of credit, zoning, and migration. Let's start with credit and interest rates. For over a decade following the 2008 financial crisis, central banks across North America pushed interest rates to near zero. Money was historically cheap. When borrowing is cheap, people can take out massive mortgages. This tidal wave of cheap credit flooded the real estate market, driving prices into the stratosphere. But why didn't developers just build more houses to meet this demand? This is where we hit the supply and zoning wall. In cities like Toronto, Vancouver, Los Angeles, and New York, outdated, restrictive zoning laws make it essentially illegal to build dense, affordable housing in most neighborhoods. It takes years of bureaucratic red tape, environmental reviews, and neighborhood opposition just to get a permit to build an apartment building. Add migration to this mix. North America relies on high-skilled migration to fuel its economic engine and support an aging population. But when you bring millions of new workers and international students into cities that literally refuse to build new housing, you create a brutal game of musical chairs. When David the nurse cannot afford to live in the city loses its resilience. Hospitals are understaffed. Teachers leave. The very people who keep the economy running are pushed to the fringes. This is no longer a real estate problem. It is a national security and economic resilience crisis. But here is where we must face the great counter-argument of the housing debate. Many people, perhaps even some of you listening right now, will say, wait, housing wealth is a good thing. It supports the middle class and funds the massive construction industry. And you are partially right. For the baby boomer generation, rising home prices created the greatest accumulation of middle class wealth in human history. Millions of families rely on the equity in their homes to fund their retirements and send their children to college. The construction and real estate sectors employ millions of workers across the continent. But here is the dark side that macroeconomists warn us about: the distortion of capital allocation. When a society's primary way to build wealth is just buying a house and waiting for it to double in value, it destroys national productivity. Think about it. A house does not invent a new microchip. A house does not cure a disease. A house does not export a new software product to the world. It is an unproductive asset. When investors and banks pour all of their capital into bidding up the price of existing concrete and wood, that money is not going to the young founders building the next great tech startup. It is not going to manufacturing. The lazy manager effect we discussed in previous episodes is mirrored by the lazy investor effect in housing. Why risk your money investing in a brilliant new business when you can just buy a condo and watch central bank policies inflate its value? This distortion is choking North America's productivity. This brings us directly to the Amero and the future of digital finance. In our movement, we advocate for upgrading North America's financial infrastructure. We talk about tokenization, the XRP ledger, and stablecoins. We envision a frictionless, interoperable finternet that settles cross-border trade in seconds. But I must be completely honest with you. A resilient monetary system must be paired with real economy reforms. We cannot code our way out of a housing shortage. If we create a perfect digital Amero, but it is still illegal to build a multifamily home in a major city, the housing crisis will persist. If we achieve frictionless cross-border payments, but all of our continent's wealth is still trapped in a speculative real estate bubble, our productivity will continue to stagnate. The promise of the Amero is transparency and capital efficiency. By modernizing our monetary rails, we can lower the cost of doing business, reduce foreign exchange friction, and free up billions of dollars in dead capital. But it is up to our policymakers, mayors, and voters to ensure that this newly freed capital flows into building a physical world where workers like David can actually afford to live. Before we close today, let's bring this back to the kitchen table with our weekly Q&A. Question 1. If central banks caused the housing bubble by making credit cheap, won't raising interest rates fix it? Raising rates cools down demand, but it creates a new nightmare. When the central bank hikes rates, as they did recently, David still can't buy a house because the mortgage interest is too high. Worse, the high rates make it incredibly expensive for developers to borrow the millions of dollars they need to build new apartment buildings. High rates crush demand, but they also paralyze the new supply we desperately need. Question 2. How does the housing crisis connect to the productivity problems? They are deeply intertwined. Productivity is about how much value a worker generates per hour. If David has to commute 2 hours each way, he is exhausted. His quality of life drops. Furthermore, because housing is so expensive, employers have to pay massive wage premiums just so their workers can survive, making North American businesses less globally competitive. Worst of all, the capital that businesses need to buy new productivity-boosting technology is instead trapped in the real estate market. Question 3. What is the call to action for today? We are trapped between two realities. We desperately need to build more affordable housing for the youth, but we cannot instantly crash the housing market without destroying the retirement savings of millions of middle-class families. So, I am asking you to solve the puzzle. Drop a comment below. What is one policy idea that would drastically improve housing supply without completely destabilizing the wealth of existing households? Is it ending single-family zoning? Is it heavily taxing empty investment properties? Let's debate the solutions. I'm Cheson Lee. Thank you for seeking the truth behind the money. I will see you next week on the Amero.
Make me